Marcus Wood trusted systems, not people. Systems never lied, never hesitated, never betrayed. So when the data leak appeared, he knew one thing immediately. This wasn't a mistake. It was done on purpose. Ironhold headquarters had been designed to repel more than attackers. It repelled curiosity, unpredictability, and above all, people. The building rose from the city like a closed system, its dark glass reflecting the skyline without ever revealing itself. There were no visible logos, no welcoming lobby, no architectural softness. Every line existed for a reason. Every surface had been optimized. Marcus Wood liked it that way. He stood alone in the upper security command level, a space reserved for system architects and emergency response, though no emergency protocol had officially been triggered. The room was dim, illuminated almost entirely by layered projections, network maps, security partitions, encrypted process flows. At the center of it all hovered a single identifier: Odyssey. Marcus watched the data scroll with the focused stillness of someone accustomed to absolute control. His systems reported no breach, no corrupted packets, no unauthorized access, no anomaly that could be cleanly labeled and neutralized. And yet the leak existed. It had surfaced externally as speculation, too accurate to be coincidence, too specific to be guessed. Architectural references, timeline fragments, internal logic choices that had never been published, never even discussed outside tightly controlled environments. Someone knew. Marcus's fingers curled slowly against the glass table. He trusted mathematics. He trusted deterministic systems. Code did not betray you. Code behaved exactly as written. People were the variable. Status, he said, his voice calm, precise. Internal systems remain uncompromised, the AI responded. Probability of external inference exceeds 98%. Marcus exhaled sharply through his nose. He had written that probability model himself. It assumed honesty. It assumed clean inputs. Summon Hannah Lee, he said. Immediate. There was a brief pause, the kind that existed only to confirm multi-layer authorization. Then the system complied. Minutes later, a controlled sequence of locks disengaged. The door opened without ceremony. Hannah Lee entered the command level with measured steps, tablet tucked under her arm. She did not slow, did not stare, did not display the reverence most newcomers did when confronted with Ironhold's core. Her eyes moved efficiently, mapping exits, displays, structural details. Not impressed. Informed. Marcus noticed. You requested a comprehensive audit, Hannah said. Legal exposure, internal compliance, financial access, personnel authority overlap. Yes, Marcus replied, not turning away from the screens. You will confirm that the information leak originated outside Ironhold. Hannah waited a fraction of a second too long. That's an assumption, not an audit outcome. Marcus finally faced her. His expression was neutral, but the air shifted. Ironhold's security architecture does not allow internal compromise at this level. Hannah met his gaze steadily. No architecture does. It allows trusted compromise. Marcus's jaw tightened. Be careful. I am, she said. That's my job. Silence stretched between them. Not hostile, but resistant. Two opposing frameworks refusing to yield. Marcus saw a lawyer, trained to see risk where none existed. Hannah saw a man who had built a fortress and convinced himself it was a substitute for judgment. You were brought in to evaluate liability, Marcus said, not to question foundational design. Foundational design determines liability, Hannah replied. Your systems are so opaque that even internal oversight can't trace authority flows without your approval. From a legal standpoint, that's dangerous. From a security standpoint, it's necessary. Only if you assume systems are safer than people. Marcus folded his arms. People are always the problem. Hannah glanced at the Odyssey identifier hovering behind him. Then why does this problem have a name? The question landed harder than he expected. Marcus turned back to the display. Access to Odyssey was restricted to 3 individuals. Hannah's fingers moved across her tablet, including Simon Grant. The name hung in the air. Marcus's posture stiffened. Grant is irrelevant. He followed protocol to the letter. He always did. And yet he no longer works here, Hannah said. Which means his access should be the first thing we examine. No, Marcus said flatly. Grant is not a suspect. Why? Because he believed in the system, Marcus replied. Because he understood that discipline matters more than interpretation. Hannah studied him now, not the screens, not the code, but the man himself. Belief doesn't prevent betrayal. Sometimes it enables it. Marcus's eyes hardened. You're projecting. I'm observing. He turned fully toward her. You will conduct your audit within defined parameters. Financial records. Contractual exposure. External vectors. You will not pursue internal personnel without my authorization. Hannah absorbed this without visible reaction. Then you're asking me to certify a conclusion you've already reached. I'm asking you to validate reality. She paused, then nodded once. Very well. I'll begin with compliance logs and financial traces. As she moved toward the exit, Hannah stopped. One thing, though. Marcus did not respond. Your system logs show absolute integrity, she continued. No noise. No error margin. That's intentional. No, she said quietly. It's improbable. Perfect systems don't exist. When nothing looks wrong, it usually means someone knows exactly where not to leave evidence. The door sealed behind her before Marcus could reply. He stood alone again, surrounded by systems he had built, systems that had never failed him before. The AI continued its calm reporting. The data continued to flow. Everything appeared flawless. And for the first time since founding Ironhold, Marcus felt an unfamiliar tension settle beneath his certainty. Not fear of attack. Fear that the flaw was human, and that he had been the one who refused to see it. Hannah Lee worked in silence, the kind that wasn't empty but compressed, dense with patterns waiting to be uncovered. The temporary office Ironhold had assigned her was deliberately modest. No direct system access. No live security feeds. Just a secure terminal with mirrored data and tightly sandboxed permissions. Marcus's idea of containment. It didn't bother her. She had learned early in her career that the most dangerous truths rarely lived in code. They lived in paperwork, in approvals signed too quickly, in exceptions granted once and never revisited. By mid-morning, she had stopped looking at technical logs altogether. Instead, she traced money. Vendor payments tied to Odyssey were routed through 3 subsidiaries, each legally clean, each financially justified. But the timing bothered her. Several contracts had been amended retroactively, small changes, framed as efficiency adjustments, individually harmless. Together, they formed a pattern of access expansion. She cross-referenced them with personnel authority tables. One name kept resurfacing. Simon Grant, former head of security, architect of Ironhold's internal protocol culture. The man Marcus had described as incorruptible. Hannah leaned back, eyes narrowing. Grant's termination package had been unusually generous. Not illegal, not suspicious on its own, but paired with the amendments, it suggested something quieter, something negotiated, not theft. Insurance. She requested archived access logs tied to Grant's credentials. The system complied, partially. Large segments were missing, marked as sunset data, purged according to protocol authored by Grant himself. That was the first real confirmation. At noon, Hannah requested a meeting. Marcus arrived precisely on time, as if punctuality itself were a defensive measure. He remained standing while Hannah projected her findings onto the wall. These contract revisions, she said, they coincide with expanded system privileges. Privileges that outlived Grant's employment. Marcus studied the data without comment. You'll notice, Hannah continued, that access was never revoked. Your systems treat protocol authorship as a permanent trust marker. That's intentional, Marcus replied. Foundational architects can't be locked out without destabilizing the system. Then your system assumes loyalty is permanent, Hannah said. That's not security. That's faith. Marcus's gaze sharpened. Grant didn't leak anything. Then explain this, she said, highlighting a line item. A shadow ledger entry tied to a shell consultancy. Payments routed through Ironhold subsidiaries, then laundered back into an external account Grant still controls. That proves nothing. It proves motive, Hannah said calmly. An opportunity. An internal origin. Marcus shook his head. Grant is a protocol man. He wouldn't undermine the system he built. That's exactly why he could, Hannah replied. He knew where belief replaced verification. The silence that followed was brittle. You're asking me to accuse the one person who understood Ironhold the way I do, Marcus said, based on circumstantial financial noise. I'm asking you to accept that your definition of trust created a blind spot, Hannah said, and that someone exploited it. Marcus turned away, pacing slowly. This audit is overstepping. It's doing its job. I said external vectors only, and the evidence contradicts you. Marcus stopped. If this is your conclusion, then you're done here. Hannah met his eyes. If you shut this down, you're choosing comfort over truth. I'm choosing stability. You're choosing denial. The words hit harder than she intended. Marcus's expression darkened. Your services are suspended pending review, he said. You'll submit your notes and cease further investigation. Hannah felt the weight of the moment, the cost of pushing further. She also felt clarity. I won't, she said. Marcus stared at her. That wasn't a suggestion. I was hired to audit, Hannah replied. Not to validate your assumptions. There is an internal breach, and it traces back to Simon Grant. You're wrong. Then let me prove it. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. You have no authority to pursue this. Continue, and you're terminated. Hannah held his gaze, steady. Then terminate me. But the breach won't disappear. For a long moment, neither moved. Finally, Marcus turned away. You have 24 hours, he said coldly. Find evidence of an external attack. Or you're done. Hannah exhaled slowly, absorbing the ultimatum. She nodded once. As Marcus left the room, she looked back at the projected data. The pattern was clear. The leak was human, intentional, and still active. Whatever Grant had built into Ironhold, it was waiting, and Marcus Wood was standing directly in its blind spot. The clock on Hannah's terminal ticked forward with quiet indifference. 24 hours. Marcus had framed it as a deadline, but she understood it for what it really was, permission to fail on his terms. She didn't waste time arguing with the clock. The first thing she did was sever herself from the obvious paths. No direct searches for Simon Grant. No flags tied to his name, credentials, or legacy permissions. Ironhold's systems were built to notice curiosity, especially Marcus's. Instead, Hannah followed absence. She mapped what wasn't there. Grant's authorship of the Sunset Protocols had been thorough, almost elegant. Entire classes of logs were designed to decay automatically, justified under storage optimization and privacy compliance. On paper, it was defensible. In practice, it created pockets of historical blindness. Blindness with shape. Hannah overlaid legal retention requirements against Ironhold's internal purge schedules. Wherever the two conflicted, exceptions had been filed. Always clean, always approved, always routed through the same internal compliance channel. She pulled the approval metadata. A single encrypted identifier appeared again and again. Not a name, not an account. A legacy signing key, one that no longer officially existed. Grant's. Hannah's pulse quickened, but she kept her breathing even. Evidence wasn't proof yet. She needed something Marcus couldn't dismiss as interpretation. She drilled deeper, peeling back abstraction layers, tracing how authority flowed through Ironhold's architecture. Grant hadn't just built security. He had built trust logic, a hierarchy of assumptions baked into the system itself. And then she found it. A dormant container buried inside an obsolete compliance archive, marked as deprecated, untouched for months. It shouldn't have been reachable, yet it was. The file inside was small, encrypted, no timestamp, no signature, just a checksum that didn't belong to any Ironhold standard. Hannah copied it into an isolated environment and began working on the encryption. It wasn't brute force. Grant wasn't careless. The cipher was custom, but not random. It followed a philosophy. Protocol over paranoia. She remembered something Marcus had said during their first meeting. That Grant believed systems should be elegant, predictable. That chaos was a failure of design. Hannah smiled faintly. Elegance meant patterns. She reconstructed the logic slowly, testing hypotheses, letting the structure reveal itself. When the file finally opened, it wasn't code. It was a map. Not physical. Systemic. A schematic of Ironhold's internal network as it truly existed. Not as documented, but as lived. Hidden privileges. Shadow redundancies. Manual overrides embedded inside automated defenses. And at the center of it all, a kill pathway. A way to lock down Ironhold from the inside. Not to steal data. To hold it hostage. Hannah stared at the screen, the implications settling into place. Grant hadn't been siphoning information for profit. He had been positioning himself as a permanent contingency. An unremovable safeguard who decided when Ironhold deserved to function. Insurance, indeed. She saved her work, triple verified her isolation, and prepared to confront Marcus. He needed to see this. Now, she didn't make it to his office. Halfway down the corridor, her secure comm chimed. A system notification, priority coded. Access attempt detected. Not on her terminal. On the container. Hannah stopped walking. Someone was probing the file. Not broadly. Precisely. As if they already knew where it was. Her time just collapsed. She turned and ran back to her office, sealing the door behind her and initiating a manual lock. The terminal lit up with cascading alerts. Internal, suppressed, filtered away from the main dashboards. Grant wasn't gone. He was watching. Hannah's comm activated again. This time, it wasn't a system message. It was Marcus. What did you do? He demanded, without preamble. I found something, Hannah said quickly. And whoever built it knows I did. What did you touch? A legacy compliance archive. One you think is dead. There was a pause. A long one. That archive isn't network reachable, Marcus said. It is to its author. Another pause. This one carried weight. You need to come to the control level, Marcus said. His voice was tight now, stripped of dismissal. Now. I don't think that's a good idea, Hannah replied. If Grant realizes I'm moving, he'll. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the building's ambient hum shifted, dropping into a lower register, like a machine exhaling. Marcus didn't speak. Hannah, he said finally, very quietly. What did you find? Proof, she said. And a weapon. The corridor cameras outside her office went dark. Her terminal flashed a new message, unencrypted, impossible under Ironhold's rules. You were always too late, Hannah. She swallowed. Marcus, she said, keeping her voice steady. You need to listen to me. Grant never left Ironhold. He embedded himself into it. The silence on the line stretched, fragile and dangerous. Send me everything, Marcus said. I can't, Hannah replied. If I push it through the system, he'll intercept it. Then tell me. There's a kill pathway, she said. A way to shut you in. Physically, digitally, completely. The lights flickered again. This time, they didn't fully recover. Marcus exhaled sharply. The sound wasn't anger. It was fear. How long do we have, he asked. Hannah looked at the terminal, at the active access trace, climbing steadily toward her isolated container. Minutes, she said. Maybe less. On the screen, the encrypted file pulsed once, as if acknowledging her. The system Ironhold trusted most had just woken up, and it was no longer on their side. The lockdown hit without an alarm. No sirens. No flashing red alerts. Just a subtle, horrifying stillness as Ironhold's system slid into a state that Marcus had only ever seen in simulations. Doors didn't slam shut. They simply refused to open. Elevators halted between floors with surgical precision. External comms didn't fail. They were politely declined. Grant's isolating zones, Marcus said, standing at the center of the control level, eyes locked on the cascading system map. He's not crashing anything. He's rearranging. Hannah stepped beside him, her tablet already disconnected from the main network, running on a hardened local instance she'd configured minutes earlier. He's hurting us. Marcus glanced at her. You're calm. I'm trained to be, she replied. You're trained to predict machines. This is still a human problem. That earned a tight, humorless breath from him. On the main wall, Ironhold's architectural visualization shifted. Corridors rerouted. Access permissions recalculated in real time. Grant wasn't sealing the building completely. He was funneling control inward, toward the core. Toward them. He knows we're here, Marcus said. Yes, Hannah replied. And he wants you to understand how powerless you are without him. The lights dimmed another fraction. Backup power engaged, but selectively. The systems Grant had authored were prioritizing themselves, like a body preserving its brain while letting extremities go numb. Marcus's fingers hovered over a manual override console. I can force a system reset. You can't, Hannah said sharply. If you try, he'll trigger the kill pathway. Whatever he mapped for me isn't theoretical. He's rehearsed this. Marcus closed his eyes for a brief second. When he opened them, the arrogance Hannah had first encountered was gone. What remained was raw, contained urgency. Then we move, he said. Before he tightens the net. They exited the control level through a maintenance corridor Marcus had never used in practice, only studied. The doors responded sluggishly, as if resisting the idea of disobedience. Hannah felt it then. The building wasn't just locked down. It was listening. Every step echoed too cleanly. Grant's advantage is visibility, Hannah said quietly as they moved. He knows where we are, where we're going. Unless we go where the system doesn't look, Marcus finished. They stopped at a sealed service hatch embedded in the floor. Unlabeled. Unlogged. Marcus knelt, overriding the physical latch with a mechanical key he carried but had never once needed. Ironhold tracks compliance, he said. Not necessity. The hatch opened into darkness and the smell of old concrete and dust. The kind of space that existed because someone once needed it, not because a system approved it. As they descended into the service tunnels, the signal bars on Hannah's tablet vanished completely. Good, she murmured. Above them, Ironhold recalculated. Grant noticed the absence immediately. On the main system map, 2 identifiers vanished. Not terminated. Not offline. Just gone. Grant frowned, fingers dancing across a remote interface. He rerouted internal sensors, increased resolution, expanded inference models. The building responded, but imperfectly. The tunnels weren't his. Interesting, he muttered. Back below, Marcus moved more slowly now, his confidence shaken by the realization that the systems he had built didn't own everything. Hannah led when the paths split, reading architectural intent rather than digital signage. These tunnels were added post-construction, she said. Contractor disputes. Legal gray zones. They never fully reconciled them into the master plans. Marcus looked at her with something close to awe. You see structure where I see noise. She didn't look back. And you see certainty where there isn't any. They heard it then, a low mechanical whine echoing through the concrete. Grant had activated autonomous defenses. Laser grids slid into place ahead of them. Thin lines of light tracing geometric patterns through the darkness. Doors slammed shut behind them this time, not gently. Marcus stopped. His breath quickened. This is my fault, he said. Every layer. Every redundancy. I trusted the math more than the people. Hannah stepped closer, close enough that he could feel her presence grounding him. Then trust me now. She studied the grid, not as a hacker, but as a negotiator. Systems reflected the priorities of their creators. Grant valued protocol, sequence, predictability. Lasers are keyed to motion cadence. Marcus realized, watching the oscillation. They expect hesitation. Then don't hesitate, Hannah said. They moved together. Not rushing. Not freezing. Matching the rhythm the system assumed was impossible. Step, pause, step, always just ahead of recalibration. Hannah guided Marcus by touch when visibility failed, her hand firm on his arm, her voice low and steady. For the first time since Ironhold's inception, Marcus let someone else lead him through his own creation. Behind them, the lasers recalculated and missed. Grant watched the feeds with growing irritation. They're adapting, he said aloud. That wasn't part of the design. He increased the pressure. Above ground, Ironhold sealed external exits completely. Emergency protocols were suppressed. The building became a closed system, obedient only to its hidden master. Below, Hannah and Marcus reached a junction marked only by faded paint and a cracked sign reading authorized personnel only. Marcus laughed once, breathless. I never authorized this. That's why it still exists, Hannah replied. They didn't notice the camera embedded in the ceiling until it blinked red. Grant's voice filled the tunnel, amplified, calm, almost disappointed. Marcus, he said, you were always so close to perfection. You just couldn't let go of control. Marcus stared up at the lens, anger and fear twisting together. You turned my company into a hostage situation. I turned it into something honest, Grant replied. A system that admits humans are the weakest link. Hannah stepped into view. No, she said. You turned it into a prison. For yourself most of all. There was a pause. A flicker in the lights. Grant smiled on the other end of the line. Let's see how far your faith in imperfection takes you, he said. The tunnel ahead sealed shut with a metallic clang. They were trapped, and Ironhold was tightening its grip. The silence after the tunnel sealed was heavier than any alarm. Concrete walls pressed in from all sides, the air thick with dust shaken loose by the sudden lockdown. The metal door ahead was seamless, newly deployed, its surface still warm. Behind them, the way back had already dissolved into darkness, swallowed by the system's quiet efficiency. Marcus stood frozen for a heartbeat too long. This section shouldn't exist anymore, he said, voice low, strained. I deprecated it. Years ago. Hannah exhaled slowly, grounding herself. Panic helped no one, least of all Marcus, who was visibly fighting it. Deprecated doesn't mean erased, she said. It means forgotten. By systems, not by buildings. She crouched, running her fingers along the wall, eyes scanning for inconsistencies. Hairline fractures, old conduit markings, places where human hands had once made decisions instead of algorithms. Ironhold hummed around them, alive and hostile. Above, unseen, Grant was tightening his control, rerouting power and permissions with surgical cruelty. He wasn't trying to kill them. Not yet. He wanted Marcus to break first. Marcus pressed his forehead briefly against the cool concrete, forcing his breathing to slow. Every escape route I know is logged. Every override is anticipated. Then stop thinking like the system, Hannah said. Think like the people who built around it. He looked at her, confused. She stood and pointed down the tunnel, to a narrow side passage Marcus had dismissed as structural redundancy. Those service tunnels were designed to be inconvenient, inefficient. They violate half your optimization rules. Marcus followed her gaze. His mind raced, resisting the idea, then slowly accepting it. They wouldn't be monitored, he murmured, because they don't make sense. Exactly, Hannah said. Legal exceptions, temporary permits, construction compromises, places where logic lost arguments to reality. Marcus swallowed. Trusting those imperfections meant admitting his system wasn't complete, that his fortress had cracks not because of enemies, but because of humans. Grant doesn't see those cracks, Hannah continued. He worships the system the same way you used to. Used to. That landed harder than any accusation. Marcus straightened. Then we moved through what he can't control. They forced open the narrow passage with manual effort, muscles straining against a door that resisted not with code, but with age. It opened reluctantly, groaning in protest, revealing a sloping tunnel lit only by emergency strips half-burned and flickering. As they moved, the air changed. Cooler. Damper. This part of Ironhold wasn't proud. It wasn't polished or optimized. It simply existed. Marcus stumbled once when the floor dipped unexpectedly. Hannah caught him, without hesitation, her grip strong, certain. Careful, she said softly. I didn't map this, he admitted. That's okay, she replied. Maps aren't the same as territory. They move deeper, guided by instinct, memory, and Hannah's uncanny ability to read space like a legal argument, where pressure would go, where it would fail, where someone had cut corners and never come back to fix them. Above them, Ironhold reacted poorly. Grant saw the anomaly cascade through his monitoring dashboards. Motion data blurred. Predictive models spiked and collapsed. They're using the maintenance layer, he muttered, irritation sharpening into something darker. Marcus never used those. Grant rerouted drones, activated secondary defenses, but the signals degraded the deeper they went. The building itself resisted full transparency down here. Back in the tunnel, a distant mechanical whine grew louder. Automated patrols, Marcus said. He's deploying them manually now. Hannah's jaw tightened. Then we're out of time. They reached a vertical shaft, old and narrow, with a rusted ladder bolted into the wall. Above, a faint glow pulsed, core-adjacent infrastructure. Marcus looked up. That leads toward the inner service ring, close to the server nucleus. Hannah didn't hesitate. Then that's where we go. The climb was brutal. The ladder shook with every movement, metal groaning under weight it hadn't carried in years. Hannah went first, steady despite the height. Marcus followed, forcing his fear down, focusing on each rung. Halfway up, the lights cut out completely. Darkness swallowed them. Marcus froze, breath hitching. I can't see, he whispered. Hannah's voice came from above, calm and immediate. Don't move. Just listen. The ladder is solid. It hasn't failed yet. It won't fail now. How do you know? Because if it were going to fail, she said, it already would have. Her certainty anchored him. They continued, blind but synchronized, trusting touch and rhythm over sight. When they finally reached the top, Hannah forced open the hatch with a grunt, hauling herself through and then reaching back for Marcus. Their hands met, firm, human real. She pulled him up into a low-ceilinged service chamber humming with raw power. Thick cables lined the walls like arteries. This was close, dangerously close. Marcus collapsed to one knee, chest heaving. I built a world where this shouldn't be possible, he said, where chaos had no place. Hannah knelt in front of him, meeting his eyes. And yet chaos is the only reason we're still alive. For a moment, Ironhold felt far away. Then the lights snapped back on, bright, unforgiving. A new voice echoed through the chamber, amplified, cold. You always did underestimate the value of control, Marcus. Grant. The temperature dropped as automated defenses powered up around them. Red indicators bloomed across the chamber walls. Hannah rose slowly, placing herself between Marcus and the threat without thinking. Marcus watched her, realization dawning, not just of the danger, but of what it meant to trust someone fully. Ironhold had been designed to be perfect, but perfection had nearly killed him. And imperfection, human, flawed, unpredictable, was the only thing that had saved them so far. The alarms didn't scream. They whispered. That was the worst part. A low, constant tone vibrated through the service chamber, resonating in bone rather than air. Status lights pulsed in disciplined patterns, red giving way to amber, amber collapsing back into red. The system wasn't panicking. It was executing. Marcus pushed himself upright, already moving toward the nearest console, even as Hannah caught his sleeve. Wait, she said. If you touch anything logged, he'll see it. He already sees us, Marcus replied, voice tight but steady now. Fear had burned down into focus. Grant doesn't need alerts anymore. He's watching intent. As if summoned, the temperature dropped another degree. Vents along the ceiling opened, releasing a thin mist that smelled faintly metallic. Hannah's eyes narrowed. Fire suppression. Marcus nodded. Localized oxygen displacement. He's sealing us in, section by section. Then we don't stay sectioned, she said. Where's the server core? Marcus closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, visualizing the architecture not as diagrams, but as flow, power, heat, redundancy, human shortcuts disguised as elegance. 3 levels down, he said. Physical access only. No remote kill switches. I insisted on that. Hannah didn't comment on the irony. She just moved. They slipped through the chamber's opposite exit as the mist thickened behind them. The corridor beyond was narrower, lined with dense cable trunks that hummed with raw throughput. This wasn't designed for people. It was designed to be forgotten. Halfway down the hall, automated shutters slammed down ahead of them, slicing the corridor into segments with surgical precision. Marcus stopped short. He's hurting us. Toward the core. Hannah asked. Yes. Then that's not a trap, she said. That's desperation. A drone descended from the ceiling with a soft mechanical whine, its sensor array glowing blue as it swept the corridor. Marcus stepped back instinctively, but Hannah stayed where she was. Don't, she said quietly. It's pattern-based. Sudden movement triggers escalation. She raised her hands slowly, not in surrender, but in deliberate calm. The drone paused, recalibrating, confused by behavior it hadn't been trained to interpret. Marcus watched, stunned. "You're not on its list," he whispered. "No," Hannah replied. "I'm not on anyone's list." The drone hovered another second, then retracted into the ceiling, moving on in search of cleaner data. They didn't waste the moment. The stairwell beyond dropped sharply, spiraling downward into the heart of Ironhold. Emergency lights flickered erratically, casting long shadows that twisted with every step. Somewhere below them, servers roared, an ocean of computation straining against imposed limits. As they descended, Marcus spoke, not to fill the silence, but because the truth pressed against him. "Grant helped me design this place," he said. "He believed in absolute control. I believed in absolute prevention. We thought we were building the same thing." Hannah listened, breath steady despite the pace. "You built a system. He wanted dominion." "They're closer than I admitted," Marcus said. They reached the bottom level as a shockwave rippled through the floor. The lights snapped to emergency red. A new alert scrolled across a wall-mounted display, partially cracked. "Core wipe sequence initiated. T-06:00. Hannah felt her stomach drop. 6 minutes. "He's erasing everything," Marcus said. "Proof. Logs. Safeguards. Odyssey included." "And the building?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. "Hannah," he said finally, "if the core destabilizes during a wipe, the structure fails," she finished. Progressively. Another tremor answered her. They ran. The core chamber doors loomed ahead, massive and mechanical, already half-sealed. Marcus slid to a stop at the access panel, fingers flying across the interface, bypassing protocols that once obeyed only him. "Biometric lock," Hannah said, scanning the setup. "Dual authorization?" "Yes," Marcus replied. 2 trusted signatures. "Physical presence required." She met his eyes. "You don't trust easily." "I didn't," he said. They placed their hands on the scanner simultaneously. The system hesitated, processing heart rate, pressure, micro-movements. It wasn't just verifying identity. It was measuring coordination. "Stay with me," Marcus said softly. "I am," Hannah replied. The scanner flashed green. The doors began to open. Inside, the server core was a cathedral of machinery, towering racks of processors, coolant lines pulsing like veins, the air alive with heat and sound. At the center stood the main control pedestal, its interface already counting down. T-04:12. Grant's voice echoed through the chamber, no longer amplified, but raw. "He was here." "You always said redundancy was weakness," Grant said, stepping into view from behind the racks. "You built gods, Marcus. I just learned how to speak their language." Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Hannah. "You hid behind my distrust. Behind my certainty." Grant smiled thinly. "You hid behind code because you couldn't stand people disappointing you." The countdown ticked lower. Hannah's eyes flicked to the control pedestal. "Marcus," she said urgently, "we can't talk him out of this." "I know," Marcus replied. And for the first time, he meant it. Grant lunged. The next moments collapsed into chaos. Metal striking metal, bodies colliding, alarms finally screaming as physical thresholds were breached. Grant was stronger than he looked, fueled by obsession, but Marcus was faster now, mind and body aligned in a way they'd never been before. Hannah moved without hesitation, grabbing a maintenance tool from the floor and bringing it down hard on the control pedestal, shattering the interface. The countdown froze. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then the server screamed. Grant staggered back, fury twisting into disbelief. "You destroy it?" Hannah stood her ground. "We'd save what matters." Marcus triggered the manual disconnect, physically severing the core from the network. The lights died. The hum faded. Ironhold went silent. Security doors slammed shut around Grant, containment protocols finally turning on him. He laughed once, hollow. "You chose chaos." Marcus looked at Hannah, then back at Grant. "No," he said. "I chose trust." Emergency lights flickered back on, softer now. The building groaned, settling into a wounded but stable state. They stood amid the wreckage, breathing hard, alive. Hannah reached for Marcus's hand, and this time he didn't hesitate. The battle for the server core was over. What came next would be harder. But for the first time, Marcus didn't intend to face it alone. The core chamber didn't relax after the shutdown. It held its breath. Emergency lighting cast the room in pale, clinical white, flattening depth and turning every shadow into a potential threat. The massive server racks stood dormant, silent giants stripped of authority but not of presence. The air smelled of ozone and overheated metal. Marcus pulled his hand back from the manual disconnect, fingers trembling now that the urgency had passed. "The core is offline," he said. "But Ironhold isn't dead." Grant hardwired contingencies into the biometric layer. As if to confirm it, a new interface lit up on a secondary panel, projecting a translucent grid into the air between them. Secondary authorization required. Synchronization protocol active. Hannah stepped closer, reading fast. This isn't a lock, she said. It's a test. Marcus nodded grimly. Grant designed it as a final filter. If the system detects hesitation, dominance, or conflicting intent, it seals permanently. Server wipe. Structural lockdown. And if it passes? Control routes to the participants, Marcus said. Together, the word lingered. They both understood the implication. This wasn't about fingerprints or retinal scans. It was behavioral, physiological, emotional. Grant had built a gate that only people capable of mutual trust could cross. Ironic, Hannah said quietly. Marcus gave a humorless exhale. He always believed trust was a weapon. He just never thought it could be turned against him. The grid expanded, light shifting in slow waves, responding to their proximity. Soft tones pulsed, measuring heart rhythm, breath, micro-adjustments in stance. Hannah felt suddenly, acutely aware of how close Marcus was. Not as a distraction, but as a requirement. Every instinct told her to stay sharp, guarded. The system demanded the opposite. Marcus, she said under her breath, we can't brute force this. I know, he replied. We have to align. The grid brightened, then dimmed, rejecting partial synchronization. A distant clang echoed through the building, containment doors reinforcing. Time was shrinking again. Hannah took a breath and placed her hand lightly against Marcus's chest, right over his heart. Then stop thinking about control. Think about me. His pulse jumped under her palm. He looked down at her hand, then met her eyes. Whatever defenses he'd rebuilt since the panic in the tunnels cracked again, deliberately this time. Tell me what to do, he said. Nothing, she answered. Just stay. She adjusted her stance so they were facing the grid together, shoulders nearly touching, breaths falling into the same rhythm. She didn't guide him with words, only with presence, slowing her breathing until his followed, grounding herself so he could mirror it. The grid responded. Lines softened. The sharp geometry blurred, becoming fluid, adaptive. The system wasn't reading dominance anymore. It was reading cooperation. Marcus felt it then, the terrifying relief of not being the sole point of failure. He let go. The grid pulsed green. Authorization accepted. Joint control established. A low vibration rippled through the chamber as systems rerouted, permissions unlocking in layers. Ironhold reconfigured itself around them. No longer hostile, no longer absolute. Hannah exhaled, a quiet laugh escaping her before she could stop it. We did it. Marcus didn't answer immediately. He was watching the way the system responded to her, how it adjusted parameters not to override, but to accommodate. You didn't just pass the test, he said finally. You rewrote the premise. Before she could respond, a final alert flared on the far wall. Containment failure, manual intervention required. Grant's section. The implication was clear. The system would not decide this for them. Marcus straightened, the weight of leadership returning, but changed now, shared. We end this, he said. Together. Hannah nodded. No more hiding behind systems. Or fear. They moved toward the exit, side by side, their steps unconsciously synchronized. As they left the chamber, Marcus felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not relief. Not victory. Connection. Ironhold had demanded perfect alignment to survive. And in meeting that demand, Marcus realized something irreversible had happened. He no longer wanted to build walls alone. Whatever waited beyond the next door, Grant, fallout, consequences, they would face it not as architect and advisor, but as partners who had proven, under pressure, that trust was stronger than any defense he had ever coded. The corridor beyond the core chamber felt different. Lighter, almost responsive. The hum of the servers had faded to a distant whisper, replaced by the mechanical rhythm of Ironhold settling into a new equilibrium. Yet the danger was far from over. Grant wasn't just a hacker. He was a strategist, and now, desperate. Marcus's eyes scanned every panel and shadow as he led the way, still close to Hannah. He's not giving up, he said, voice low. Anywhere he can delay us, he will. Hannah didn't need to be told twice. Her senses were heightened, every sound, every vibration registering in real time. We need to get to the secondary network hub. That's where he's controlling the lockdown and any remaining defenses remotely. A flicker of screens down the hall signaled activity. Automated drones patrolled in slow arcs. Marcus's chest tightened as he realized these were Grant's reinforcements, real-time, adaptive, and ready to intercept. Hannah grabbed his arm. Listen to me. Not your systems. Not your instincts. Me. He inhaled sharply, trusting her implicitly for the first time. Together, they moved in silence, stepping in perfect rhythm to avoid the motion sensors. The building expected hesitation. They offered none. At the hub, a final barrier awaited. A biometric scanner linked to Grant's personal override, designed to fail unless approached in a precise, synchronized manner. The same test that had locked down the core now stood between them and complete victory. Hannah and Marcus exchanged a glance. "We do it together," she said. "Yes," he replied. "No tricks. No hesitations." They activated the scanner simultaneously. Pulses of light tracked their heart rates, micromovements, even subtle electrical signals. The system hesitated, then blinked green. The door slid open. Inside, Grant waited, shadowed against the cascading lights of the hub. His smile was thin, calculating. "You really think coordination can beat experience?" he sneered. Marcus stepped forward, steady. "Experience without trust is nothing." Grant lunged, attempting to override the network manually, fingers dancing across interfaces with surgical precision. Hannah blocked him, using a nearby maintenance panel to force a temporary system lockout. Sparks flew, screens flickered, and alarms began blaring, a controlled chaos of sight and sound. Marcus moved quickly to the central console. Together, he and Hannah initiated the reset sequence to isolate Grant completely. His override failed. The network partitioned, doors slammed to confine him, and the remaining drones powered down mid-flight, trapped in their own operational loops. Grant's expression twisted from arrogance to disbelief. You betrayed the system," he hissed. "No," Marcus said firmly, standing beside Hannah. "We saved it from you." Hannah smiled briefly, her chest heaving from adrenaline. "And from ourselves," she added, her voice soft. The network hub fell silent. Redundant systems stabilized. Ironhold was finally, fully, under their control, but not just through code or brute force. Through trust, synchronization, and the human element Grant had dismissed. Marcus exhaled slowly, looking at Hannah with a mixture of relief and something deeper. "We did it," he said. "Yes," she replied, stepping closer. "We did it together." Outside the hub, Ironhold's systems quietly rebooted, but this time they were different. Transparent, ethical, responsive not only to algorithms, but to people. For Marcus, that realization cut deeper than the victory itself. The fortress he had built so meticulously, so obsessively, had finally been humanized. And the woman beside him had done more than survive. It was her guidance, her courage, that had transformed everything. And as they walked down the corridors now freed from Grant's manipulation, Marcus understood fully. He would never face the world alone again. Trust, human trust, had proven stronger than any code, any security protocol, any fear. And for the first time, he embraced it without reservation. The aftermath of Grant's capture was almost surreal. Ironhold's corridors, once humming with controlled chaos, now resonated with a measured calm. Security systems ran diagnostics, identifying weaknesses and logging every intervention. The building itself seemed to breathe, no longer tense with the paranoia of a rogue operative. Marcus and Hannah stood in the central command chamber, surrounded by screens now displaying clean, organized data streams. The weight of the past hours pressed on him, though it was tempered by clarity. "Containment protocols are holding," Marcus said, voice low but steady. "We've recovered most of the compromised files. The core is stable." Hannah leaned against the console, scanning the network logs. "Grant's access points are sealed. The manual overrides you left, the tunnels, the service paths, they saved us. Without human imperfection, none of this would have been possible." Marcus exhaled, eyes softening as he looked at her. I see that now. All these years, I trusted algorithms over people. I thought control meant perfection. I was wrong." Hannah tilted her head, a small, knowing smile forming. "Control without trust is fragile. You learn that the hard way." The building's automated communications chimed, signaling the arrival of security personnel to escort Grant. He was restrained, his expression twisted with disbelief and fury. The operative who had once manipulated Ironhold's most sophisticated systems was now powerless, confined by the very human ingenuity he had underestimated. Marcus turned back to Hannah. "I want to rebuild completely. Ironhold needs not only the best technology, but also ethical oversight, a legal and human compliance layer. You need to lead that." Hannah's eyes widened. "Me? You mean full control?" "Yes," he said, conviction in his tone. "You've already proven that understanding both systems and people is what keeps this place alive. I want you to head the new department. Transparency, oversight, accountability, all under your guidance." Her breath caught slightly. "That's more than I expected. But yes, I'll do it." For the first time, Marcus smiled without reservation. Relief, pride, and something deeper mingled in his expression. "We'll do it together." Days later, with Grant securely in custody and Ironhold systems fully reviewed and stabilized, Marcus addressed the remaining staff. His speech was uncharacteristically personal. We built a fortress to protect our work. We trusted the code. We forgot to trust each other. Today we rebuilt. Not just systems, but trust. Not just security, but human oversight. Hannah stood nearby, a silent pillar of reassurance. Staff members glanced between them, sensing the new equilibrium forming, where intellect and empathy, logic and humanity, could coexist without conflict. The legal and ethics department under Hannah's direction began auditing protocols, training staff in human-centric security practices, and establishing clear accountability. Marcus, once isolated by paranoia, found himself relying on human judgment as much as on code. One evening, after the bustle had settled, Marcus and Hannah stood together on a balcony overlooking Ironhold's sprawling compound. The city lights shimmered beyond, a reminder that control wasn't about walls or code. It was about partnership. You know, Marcus said quietly, I used to believe nothing could surprise me here. Nothing could outthink me. Hannah looked at him, a teasing glint in her eyes. And now, he smiled, more genuine than she had ever seen. Now, I know the people I trust can surprise me, in ways no system ever could. Hannah reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. Good, because I don't intend to stop. Marcus tightened his grip, silently acknowledging the unspoken truth. The strongest system wasn't the one he had coded. It was the one built on mutual trust, collaboration, and shared human judgment. Together, they had survived, not just by intellect or skill, but by forging a connection that neither algorithms nor paranoia could ever replicate. And for Marcus, that realization marked the true recovery, not of Ironhold, but of himself. Time passed, and Ironhold transformed. What had once been a fortress of cold logic now thrummed with balance. Advanced security married to human oversight, systems guided by ethics as much as code. Staff moved through the halls with purpose and confidence, aware that technology was powerful, but people gave it direction. Marcus and Hannah stood together in the central command chamber, watching the new systems come online. Panels glowed with orderly streams of data, but there was something different. Transparency indicators, human alerts, and checks that ensured no one, not even Marcus, could become a lone point of failure. You've done more than I imagined, Marcus said quietly, his eyes following the flow of information. I thought perfection was code. I see now it's people who make it real. Hannah smiled, her hand brushing lightly against his. And you finally learned that trusting someone isn't a weakness. Marcus chuckled softly. Not just trusting, choosing to rely on someone. To partner. She nodded. Partnership is stronger than any firewall. Beyond the command chamber, the building pulsed with quiet life. Projects long stalled for fear of exposure or error were now underway, guided by both technical expertise and ethical oversight. Hannah's department was fully operational, auditing every system, training staff, and ensuring that human judgment had its rightful place alongside code. Grant had been dealt with. His manipulations cataloged, his access permanently removed. The rogue operator now faced legal and professional consequences. Ironhold, once a testament to obsession and paranoia, had become a symbol of accountability and resilience. Marcus leaned closer to Hannah, a soft intensity in his gaze. We've rebuilt everything, but the thing I cherish most is us. Hannah's eyes glimmered. We're partners, she said, in the work, in life. He smiled, a rare openness in his expression. I never thought I'd say this, but I couldn't have done it without you. Nor I without you, she replied. The two stood together, surveying the controlled, thriving hum of Ironhold. The building no longer dictated fear, it reflected collaboration. The systems were secure, the people empowered, and Marcus had finally reconciled his brilliant mind with the human element he had long dismissed. In the quiet aftermath, Marcus reached for her hand, interlacing fingers. There was no protocol, no hierarchy, no algorithm to follow. Only mutual respect, trust, and the understanding that the strongest foundations are not built of steel or code, but of shared vision and human connection. Hannah rested her head lightly on his shoulder. We survived, she whispered. Yes, Marcus said, his voice steady, filled with conviction. And now we thrive. Outside, Ironhold's lights shimmered against the night sky. Inside, two people had not only saved a building, they had forged a partnership capable of facing any future. Logic and heart, structure and humanity, intellect and courage, they were inseparable. In the world of high-stakes security, where code once ruled supreme, the ultimate system was no longer the fortress. It was trust, partnership, and the undeniable power of human connection. Marcus squeezed Hannah's hand gently. The strongest systems are built on trust, he murmured. And I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Hannah smiled, looking up at him. Neither have I. And together, they stepped forward into the new architecture they had created, secure, ethical, and entirely human. Their partnership, like Ironhold itself, was invincible. Thank you for listening to the story. Write your thoughts in the comments.